Imagine this. A woman standing by the frosted window of an old wooden house, snow falling so thick it silences the entire town. The storm outside is the kind that buries cars and keeps families huddled inside for days. And in that very storm, something extraordinary happens. What if I told you that a simple housekeeper, someone who most people might overlook, ended up opening her doors to 15 stranded millionaires that night? And what if I also told you that by the next morning, 135 luxury cars crowded her driveway, not because of wealth, but because of what her kindness set into motion? Stick around until the end of this story, because it's one that will not only surprise you but might just change the way you look at the world. And before we dive in, if stories about hope, kindness, and life-changing moments inspire you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe, because we bring you tales that remind us what truly matters. Her name was Maria. 54 years old, a widow, and the housekeeper of an old estate on the edge of a small mountain town. The estate wasn't hers, she simply worked there, keeping the hallways warm and the lights glowing for a wealthy family who barely ever visited. She lived in the caretaker's quarters, a small room tucked near the back, and while she never complained, her life was quiet, sometimes achingly so. On the night of the storm, Maria had just brewed herself a cup of tea when she heard a loud pounding at the main door. When she opened it, her eyes widened. Standing there was a man in an expensive coat, his hair and beard layered in snow. Behind him, barely visible in the white curtain, were headlights. Dozens of them. The man introduced himself quickly, his group of friends, all wealthy businessmen and women traveling together after a conference, had been caught in the blizzard. Their cars were stuck along the road, the engines barely holding against the freezing wind. They needed shelter. Without thinking twice, Maria opened the door wide and told them to come in. And so, 15 millionaires, people used to suites in glass towers, private jets, and red carpet dinners, stepped into the dimly lit halls of an old mountain house kept warm by a single woman who lived paycheck to paycheck. At first, the contrast was striking. The guests carried themselves with a mix of authority and discomfort, their tailored clothes and polished shoes soaked from the storm. They asked if there were enough rooms, if there was heat, if she had food. Maria smiled softly, almost apologetically, and admitted she only had a few guest rooms ready and enough soup for one person. But she promised she would make it work. And she did. She brought out old blankets, extra pillows, even her own quilt. She dug into her pantry and stretched a simple pot of vegetable soup into bowls for 15, choosing to eat nothing herself. That night, in the flicker of candlelight during a power outage, something began to shift. These millionaires, who had spent their lives surrounded by luxury, sat cross-legged on the floor, sipping the thinnest soup they'd ever tasted. Yet, strangely, none of them complained. They watched Maria moving around, her hands trembling slightly with exhaustion but her face glowing with warmth. They asked her about her life, and for the first time in years, she told her story. About losing her husband too soon, about raising her son who had gone to the city for work, about how she stayed strong because she believed kindness was never wasted, even when nobody seemed to notice. By midnight, the storm outside roared louder, but inside the house, laughter and conversation grew warmer. The millionaires shared their own fears and failures, stories they never told anyone in their glittering circles. Stripped of their status, they were simply people, cold, hungry, grateful to be alive, and grateful to her. Some of them admitted they hadn't sat at a table like this in years, sharing one pot of food without agendas, without deals, without pretense. The next morning, the snow had softened. Maria stepped outside, expecting to see only a few cars buried in white. But what she saw instead made her heart stop. All along the driveway, up the road, and spilling into the fields were cars. Not just the 15 from last night, but at least 135 more. Black SUVs, luxury sedans, sports cars with snow still clinging to their wheels. At first, Maria thought it was a dream, but then she realized what had happened. Those 15 millionaires had each called friends, family, and colleagues, telling them about the woman who had given them shelter when she had so little herself. They had told the story of the housekeeper who didn't ask who they were, didn't care about their money, but simply opened her door because she couldn't leave anyone out in the cold. Word spread like fire, and now, people had come, not to gawk, not out of curiosity, but to help. To give back. Men and women stepped out of their cars carrying bags of groceries, blankets, heaters, even envelopes. Some brought building supplies to fix the old estate. Others came with letters of thanks, and some with tears in their eyes, simply asking Maria to accept their gratitude. The millionaires stood beside her, no longer towering figures but humbled friends, promising her that her life was about to change. And it did. By the end of the week, Maria's small caretaker's room had been renovated into a warm apartment. A scholarship fund had been started in her husband's memory. The house itself was restored, not for the absent owners, but for Maria, because she deserved it. Yet, through it all, Maria remained the same. Grateful, quiet, still brewing her tea at the window. She told them all, "It wasn't me who saved you. It was kindness. And kindness is something we all carry inside us. We just forget to use it."